Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me again at the Marie Collins Foundation Annual Conference. It's a pleasure to be here with you. As I said, my name is Jacqueline Beauchere, and I'm from Microsoft. I serve as the company's global digital safety advocate. And today I have a number of things to share with you. We're going to sort of compact a number of different topics into one presentation. So I'm first going to share with you Microsoft's approach to what we call digital safety or online safety. And then I'd like to share with you a bit of what Microsoft has done over the course of the last 2 decades in fighting child sexual exploitation and abuse online. I'd like to share with you a new technique that we've created and released earlier this year for the purposes of detecting child online grooming for sexual purposes. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about digital civility, which is the overall campaign that we put atop all of these digital safety issues. And then finally, I've been asked to address some of the challenges, the ongoing challenges that industry faces on a regular basis in the digital safety space. So first of all, I'd like to ground us in a definition. What is safety online? What is digital safety? I put this working definition in place some 8 years ago because I think if you asked 15 different people at the time at Microsoft, what is online safety, you'd probably get 15 different answers. And to me, it's about helping people and empowering people to maximize the desirable experiences, those experiences that they want to have online. And we want to minimize those associated with what I call the 4 C's: content, contact, conduct, and commerce. So in and of themselves, those terms are pretty innocuous, but when we're talking about, as we know, illegal content, illegitimate commerce, inappropriate contact, we're operating in the digital safety space. And of course, protecting children, protecting the elderly, protecting people with disabilities, those are all key audiences that fall into the digital safety space. So I'm sure everyone here understands what I say when I mean the 4 C's. So content, contact, conduct, commerce. I just want to point out the 2 in the center here on this slide. Contact and conduct, in my opinion, kind of 2 sides of the same coin. So when we talk about contact, we're looking at the issue from the target's standpoint, from the person who is on the receiving end of the unwelcome or unwanted contact, the bullying, the stalking, what have you. And then conduct, we're looking at from the actor's standpoint, the person who is exhibiting those bullying behaviors, stalking behaviors, harassing behaviors. And at Microsoft in the digital safety space, we focus primarily on content, both illegal and harmful content, and then also the conduct that the person is exhibiting on our services. So our approach basically is 4-fold. We have our own policies, standards, and procedures that govern our internal governance. It's what we do to put those practices in place to make sure that we're protecting our customers and the integrity of our services as much as possible. We also try to innovate and we invest in technology, and I'll share some of that with you shortly. And then we also invest in collaboration, partnerships with others. And that could be others in industry, that could be government, that could be CSOs, civil society organizations, much like the Marie Collins Foundation, supporting various efforts and collaborating on various efforts. And finally, we really want to always invest in awareness raising and informal education among the general public. So we want to make sure that we're bringing their attention to these issues so that they know how best to protect themselves and their families. I have listed 2 websites here if you're interested. It's Microsoft.com/saferonline is our main webpage. And then for our digital civility campaign, Microsoft.com/digital civility. So all of our work is grounded, of course, in our Microsoft Services Agreement. This is what everyone signs on to if you want to use some of the products that Microsoft offers. Within that Microsoft Services Agreement, this section 3, as you'll see, is our code of conduct. And you have to agree to our code of conduct in order to participate in our services. I want to highlight these first 2 points. There's obviously a list of 10 thou shall nots, but what we're looking at here is we want to make sure people aren't doing anything illegal. That's, of course, child sexual exploitation and abuse imagery and other things as well. And then particularly for number 2, we want to make sure that people aren't engaging in any activity that exploits, harms, or threatens to harm children. Another one that's very prominent in the work that I do right now is number 7, which is trying to not do anything that is harmful to you, the services, or others. And that would include, again, stalking, posting terrorist content, violent extremist content, and communicating or advocating hate speech. So as I said, there's a range of digital safety issues that I'm involved in, primarily child sexual exploitation and abuse, and primarily terrorism and violent extremism. But that's not to say that we're not concerned about hate speech on our services or the non-consensual distribution of intimate images, what's commonly and unartfully referred to as revenge porn, online bullying, harassment, stalking, and so forth. And of course, all of these risks are further complicated by the ability to live stream. So looking specifically at what Microsoft has done to combat child sexual exploitation and abuse imagery online over the years, I'm going to take us back 17, 18 years or so to when we were first contacted by a detective within the Toronto Police Department. And he reached out via email to our then CEO, Bill Gates, and asked for Bill Gates's help from technology in trying to track down purveyors of child sexual exploitation and abuse imagery online. Microsoft responded at the time with a $1 million investment, and it resulted in a tool that is used still by some in the law enforcement agencies around the world to track down purveyors of child sexual exploitation and abuse imagery. It was known as the Child Exploitation Tracking System, or CETS. If we fast forward to 2009, that was when we made photo DNA available and donated it to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Photo DNA has been characterized as the single most significant contribution in the fight against child sexual exploitation and abuse imagery online. It has the unique ability to find duplicates of known illegal material with incredible accuracy and flag for a company or a law enforcement agency or a civil society organization that that is in fact a duplicate, even though perhaps it has been altered in some way. And so to signal to that company or to that entity to take down that material. As I said, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I just want to forward ahead to 2018 and then 2020. In 2018, we announced photo DNA for video, that was also available. And at the same time, later that year, we announced what I call a 360 cross-industry hackathon. 360 degrees, meaning looking at that issue from all angles and all vectors, not just looking at and bringing a bunch of engineers together or technical people together to say, oh, let's have a hackathon and let's try to create something to tackle child sexual abuse online. We wanted to focus that problem set to grooming for sexual purposes. So we brought our engineers together, but we also brought our legal folks together to look at the problem from the policy perspective and the legal perspective. We also brought together our operations folks to see how we can improve processing reports to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, for instance. We had an event at the end of 2018. Marie Collins and Tink Palmer participated in that event. And then we worked on the technique. A prototype was produced at that hackathon and at that event. And then we produced that prototype and worked on it to refine it and improve it all through basically 2019 with a number of other companies. And then in 2020, earlier this year, again, Marie Collins participated, as did a survivor of child online grooming for sexual purposes and many others within the industry, within government, within civil society. And we announced the public availability or general availability for companies and intended parties of that tool. And basically, it is a tool to detect grooming for sexual purposes of children online in historical text-based message conversations. And I'll get into a little bit of detail about that technique, but I want you to know that it is available for free from the NGO Thorn. And again, I thank Thorn for their willingness to step forward and be the custodian of that technique. So if you go to anti-grooming@thorn.org, you will be able to send them an email and ask about the technique. They also have a page available on their website where you can request the material as well. So just to take a little bit of a deeper dive into that grooming technique, just so you know what it is that we did and who we did it with. It was Microsoft building off of an existing patent that we had for a similar technology. And we collaborated with the Meet Group, with Roblox, and our own Xbox organization. And later, Kik joined us to participate as well. And what we created was a series of series of assets, pieces of material that we could bring together to help companies in particular identify potential instances of child online grooming on their services for sexual purposes. Again, taking place in historical text-based message conversations or chat conversations. What these algorithms do is they're applying some techniques to specific parts of that conversation. And at the end, what's yielded is a risk score. So it will say, based on the various elements in the conversation, it will tell the company, this is this given risk score. And that company can use it as a determiner across a series of a continuum or a chart that they say, this is where we want to put human eyes on this conversation and see if it's something that in fact should be reported to authorities or reported to the National Center. So why would we do something like this? As I said previously, it's really to protect our customers, to protect the integrity of our services, and we want to rid our services of these bad actors and these predators who would prey on children. And of course, we're then reporting offenders to the National Center. So briefly, how it works is we were building off of a Microsoft patent that we've been using on various services for about 5 years. And again, it's applied to historical, not real time, historical text-based message conversations. And again, it's going to evaluate various aspects of those conversations, looking for instance, is there an age discrepancy potentially between the actors? And are we seeing evidence of that in the conversation itself? Is there an exchange of imagery between the actors in the conversation? Is there a request for an exchange of imagery? Has there been exchange of sexual imagery? Are they discussing things of a sexual nature? And then again, all of those factors are evaluated where this rating can then be yielded so that there is a determiner that an individual company can set to see if they want to put human eyes on the conversation and have a human examine that conversation. So earlier this year, what we delivered was this common set of threat dimensions. As I shared with some of the examples, we're looking at age and we're looking at act. And then there is an up-leveling of the intensity and the severity of the interaction if there is a so-called effort to conceal. If we are seeing one party try to encourage the other party to participate in a dialogue on another more private service. And then these are all regular expressions that are used in conversations where you're maybe trying to find out how old someone is, as you'll see in the example here. And then finally, there are a set of algorithms that help to identify potentially the ages of the participants and to look at these aspects of the conversation as well. So moving ahead to another conversation, just shifting again to the notion of digital civility and taking you through what is now amounting to 5 years of global data that we have accumulated in this space, talking to teens and talking to adults about the various risks that they have been exposed to online. So I think you may have heard me present before about some of this research, but as I said, we're now up to 5 years of this research. And we are looking in particular at this year, we're going to look at year 4 results, and we're going to also look at a preview of some of the interesting year 5 results. So what we've been doing for the past now 5 years is polling teens and adults in a number of different countries, asking them about their lifetime exposure to 21 different online risks. In year 1, there were a few fewer risks, but now we're up to 21 online risks pretty consistently across the last 3 or so years. In our latest research, which was conducted this year, we will have talked to teens and adults in 32 countries, and we will be releasing all of that data on International Safer Internet Day on February the 9th. All of this work is always released in conjunction with Safer Internet Day. So we also release what we call our Digital Civility Index. Our Digital Civility Index basically looks at the percentage of individuals that they say that they have been exposed to some online risk. And that index is then calculated based on that percentage. It basically works like a golf score. So if you have a higher percentage of individuals in your country that are saying that they have been exposed to online risk, you're going to have a perceived level of civility in that country. So higher exposure, higher incivility, lower exposure, lower perceived civility. And we're not making any judgment about any particular country. This is based on the perceptions and gauging reactions of individuals in country. So these are the year 4 results. We'll be releasing year 5, as I said, on International Safer Internet Day. You can see that the UK, once again, topping the charts of the highest level of perceived civility in that country, with only 52% of individuals, so just over half, saying that they had been exposed to any of the online risks that we had asked about, the 21. And then the countries that you see in orange are those that are performing less so on the scale, and they are more toward a higher level of risk exposure, and thus a higher level of perceived incivility online. So the top risks for last year were basically unwanted contact. I can tell you that that has consistently been the risk that people are citing year over year over year. They are being contacted, they are being reached out to by some person that they either didn't want to be contacted by, didn't expect to be contacted by. And then you'll see here on the slide the other top 5 risks for last year. I just want to make a brief couple of remarks about the consequences. So risk exposure, as we all know from the child sexual exploitation and abuse context, is very real, and the consequences are very real, and the pain is very real. You'll see here on this slide that folks that have been exposed to some kind of online risk, and that was 76% all up, they are saying that there are real consequences from those risks. They're losing friends, they're losing money, they're perhaps quitting their job, they're losing sleep, they're becoming stressed out, and some, in fact, are even having thoughts of suicide. So this is how this risk and the exposure and consequences have tracked over the past couple of years. And as I said, the pain from these risks is also real. So of those individuals who said that they suffered from some online risk, they're also suffering pain to quite a high degree. 92% are saying that they have suffered pain from exposure to online risks, and that's up 8 percentage points from the previous year. And you'll see that the severe pain, which they described as debilitating pain that they either didn't want to get out of bed to go to work or get out of bed to go to school, 37%, so more than a third of individuals who are experiencing pain are experiencing severe pain, and that is up considerably since last year as well. So I just wanted to speak briefly about those topics that supposedly drive the most incivility. Physical appearance. People are putting photographs out there. People are putting videos out there, and folks are seizing on them to comment on physical appearance. People, of course, are sharing their views as they might want to about politics. That, of course, is garnering a lot of attention in this very heated political environment that we're seeing, not only in the United States, but in many countries around the world and globally as well. Sexual orientation, religion, and race are again rounding out the top 5 of those topics that are driving the most incivility online. So we need to be cognizant of this. We need to take this information forward and do what we can to promote civility and non-abusive public discourse. So the last thing that I'd like to share here is some information about some specific questions that we asked in our year 5 research. Again, all of these results will be released on Safer Internet Day 2021, but we wanted to get this information out as soon as possible. We asked these same individuals, teens and adults, in these 32 countries, how was civility faring in the online environment during COVID? So we're at home, we're locked down, we have to work from home, learn from home, socialize from home. How is that bearing up in terms of civility? And you will see here that worldwide, most people said it's kind of unchanged. We're not seeing any increase in civility online or any decrease in civility online as a result of being home in the COVID environment. And just to underscore, this research was fielded in the April-May timeframe. So at the height of some countries' exposure, and then others when they were just coming online and seeing the height of the exposure of the virus. 26% worldwide, so just over a quarter, said things had improved. And then just under a quarter had said that things were worse. And you can see here the breakdown by the various regions. And the last one in the lower right-hand corner is, of course, Western Europe and North America combined. So I just wanted to give you an idea of those who said that civility had improved. This is what they said they saw, which is kind of encouraging from a digital civility perspective. They said that they saw more people helping each other. They said that they saw a greater sense of community. They had this feeling that we're all in it together. They were helping each other work through dealing with a crisis. These are all very positive elements. On the flip side, those who said that things were getting worse, I thought this was quite interesting, particularly in the online environment. They saw the increased spread of false or misleading information about the virus and about other attendant consequences and results associated with it. They were taking out their frustrations online. They were showing that they were less tolerant. There were more personal attacks, more negative comments. So this is what we saw in those who suggested that things had gotten worse in the COVID environment from a civility perspective. So as I said, I was asked to address broadly some of the ongoing challenges for industry when it comes to fighting child sexual exploitation and abuse online, and just operating in the digital space, in the digital safety space particularly. So I think we can look at the challenges not just as a single challenge. I'm often asked when I meet with governments, what is the biggest challenge that industry is facing? I wouldn't say that there's any one biggest challenge. I would say that these challenges are extensive and they're widespread. So they encompass both the technical and engineering standpoint. They encompass the legal frameworks, regulatory, public policy perspectives. There's an outreach and collaboration component. We want more companies around the table participating in these dialogues. And then, of course, we always have a challenge of public awareness raising and that educational component, making sure that people are aware of how they can protect themselves online and making them aware of the risks that are out there. So just taking each of these briefly in turn, I think it's not any surprise to anyone that industry faces a data challenge whenever we are trying to create technology, to train that technology, to test that technology about identifying photos, videos, what have you. It's all about data. As I said here, data, data, data. When we embarked on the grooming technology, the grooming technique development, we were very data poor. It's hard to come by these kinds of conversations in a legitimate way. Similarly, when we are testing and training classifiers for imagery, we're always data poor. But when you're talking about data and imagery that is outright illegal contraband, we are hampered before we can even start. We can't acquire that data in order to train and test these classifiers. So we have to come up with unique and novel and inventive ways about how we can go to different hotlines or helplines or others who have the ability to retain this data to be able to test and train our technologies. From the legal and regulatory and public policy perspective, there's always that intersection with privacy. When we're dealing in the digital safety space, we're always balancing interests. We are balancing public safety or personal safety with privacy, with freedom of information, with freedom of expression, with freedom of access to information, with freedom of assembly. And we always have to strike that right balance. And I know that we're all aware of certain legislative and regulatory proposals currently that would actually hamper, hinder, and severely impinge industry's ability to scan for this type of imagery, to leverage tools and techniques like the grooming tool that we discussed, and also to invent and to innovate for other types of creative techniques to hamper the ability of predators to find children online, to identify them, to share gruesome and illegal imagery. We want to make sure that we are preserving those abilities for industry, and we want to make sure that we have this ability longer term, that these efforts are in fact future-proofed. In terms of outreach and collaboration, we want more companies involved. I think you probably know that there are more than 1,400 companies that report to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children on a regular basis. NCMEC started releasing those reports that it receives, the number of reports that it receives online last year. And we saw that more than 1,400 companies are reporting. So why is it that there were only 6 initial signatories or supporters of the voluntary principles to combat online child sexual exploitation and abuse? Why is it that there are only 18 technology companies in the Technology Coalition, which is industry's reference group and coalition for tackling child sexual exploitation and abuse online? Why is it that there are only 34 companies that are members of the We Protect Global Alliance? We need to do more to engage additional companies to bring them all around the table so that we can have more voices, more ideas, and more innovation moving forward. And then finally, in terms of public awareness raising and education, I think we all know about the New York Times award-winning series of articles that were released recently that really called a great deal of attention to child sexual exploitation and abuse online. And I think that's fabulous. But I think we can do more. I think they probably didn't go far enough. And of course, we don't want to scare and stymie the public and stop them in their tracks. But I think that there's more that we can do to educate them about these issues. And most importantly, what they can do, which is, of course, to report and to identify telltale signs if there's something happening with a child. We can all work together to have that public awareness raising campaign that really catches some attention, that is edgy and provocative, because the only way that we're going to make a difference in this uncomfortable, sensitive, and delicate space is by learning to become uncomfortable. So I thank you so much for your attention, for your time this morning. I turn it over to the organizers for the remainder of the dialogue, and I thank you again for your time.